introduce Laura. Thank you, Lori. So Laura is an ISBM practice fellow and a growth strategy consultant. She helps companies take a customer-centric data to insights, performance management approach to growth and to making business decisions with more confidence. She's a trusted advisor with global customers within the technology, cybersecurity, financial services, life sciences, and manufacturing industries. Laura collaborates with firms to accelerate profitable customer-centric growth by mobilizing leading-edge analytics, leveraging frameworks and processes, and integrating lessons from best practices. With research funds limited, so I'm now getting into your talk here. This is I think a real good clincher to be putting at the end of this day. Many B2B companies are seeing generative AI as an easy and affordable way to conduct market, customer, and competitive research. But this is our beware presentation. So the potential for amplifying confirmation bias has emerged as a critical challenge. Confirmation bias, the tendency to favor information that aligns with pre-existing beliefs, can distort the research outcomes and hinder effective decision-making. When paired with AI, this bias can create echo chambers that reinforce flawed insights. So Laura's going to give us a really good heads up on this, and I'm so appreciative that you came out to speak to us from Texas, and I'm giving it up to you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. What a great day. We've covered a lot of territory. We're going to try to make this one really kind of fun. I know you've been absorbing a lot of information, so I'm going to keep it less on the information, more on the fun, which means you're going to have to play some games with me today, okay? So I also want to thank the DuPont folks. What a wonderful facility. Last year we were at Ingredient, now we're at DuPont. These are just awesome facilities. So it's just amazing. So we're going to talk about confirmation bias, but before we do, I just kind of want to make sure I know how many of you are actually using AI to do any kind of research. And practice fellows, you are not going to be able to play the game, so you're out. Okay, raise your hand if you're using it for any kind of, okay, awesome, good. I wanted to, because we're going to talk about the risks of using AI in research. We've had several presentations on using AI for research, and I just want us to be cautionary about how we do that, because it can amplify some and create some challenges. We're going to play games around prompts, because in generative AI, it's all about prompts. Would you like to do that? All right, good, because that's what we're going to do today. All right, so let's talk research. I want to get a sense of where people are. So raise your hands if you are actually not practice fellows. You don't get to raise your hands. You're out of the game. If you actually are responsible for customer, market, research, competitive intelligence for your company. Raise your hand if you're actually responsible. Okay, good. That's wonderful. Raise your hand if you own that function, but you don't personally do it. Okay, good. All right, so just getting a sense of who's in the room here. For those of you who are actually using AI, green shirt person, come forward. Your name is? Greg, thank you for playing, Greg. How are you using AI in conducting research? So profiles or profile or persona. Now, is it profiles or personas that you're creating?
Profiles for the companies themselves.
For the companies themselves. Okay. Anybody else using AI in research? And how are you using it? Tell you, you're using AI in your research? For making profiles? Profiles. Anybody else? Yes.
Yep. So Copilot and Sherwin, and we are using it in a couple different ways. Taking larger research reports that we may have obtained from multiple companies, plugging it in, helping to analyze, helping to condense, pull out certain insights, but we're also using it just from the prompting perspective to look at different trends in the industry, customer insights, that type of data.
Beautiful.
Strategic plan.
Excellent. Okay, excellent. Okay, so that's how we do it. Now, let's talk about the challenges you have faced in using the AI to do this kind of research. So what kind of challenges have you had in using the AI to do the profiles?
Authenticity and source.
The validation?
Validation of source and authenticity.
Okay. Anybody else that's using AI? Anybody else using AI that's had some challenges with it? You raised your hand, right? Tell us your name.
Hi, Laura. I'm Lou Rocco.
I know. I know.
I think it was, but I just sometimes, and I may not be prompting. Maybe I have to improve my prompting skills, but sometimes I feel like this isn't really giving me, what I want. It's fairly superficial. I think some of that's an artifact because my company puts a wall around the co-pilot of what's allowed to.
Yeah, it's important. So for those of you who are doing the research, I didn't anticipate this question, but now that you said that, Lou, I have a question. How many of you are using this kind of research through like GPT or Perplexity.ai as an open AI, as opposed to a platform that you have that's inside the firewall? Anybody? Who's doing it inside the firewall? Okay. And how many of you are doing it through the open source AI like a ChatGPT? Okay, all right. So that's going to be important when we talk about this. All right, Lynn kind of gave the answer to this question, but what is confirmation bias? Yes, jump in.
Looking at research through the lens of the answer that you want to have rather than the actual answer.
Yeah, like a leading question,
Yeah.
Right? You're leading the witness, so to speak. Okay, so think of it in that fashion. So here's the challenge that we have. In the real definition, just so we all can be working from the same vocabulary, it is where you're going to get a tendency to get information that you want, right, based on some pre-existing beliefs. Now, let's keep in mind that when we are using AI, and I'm going to say this multiple times, somebody has put information in order for us to get information out. And whoever puts the information in brings with them their biases, right? So that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're going to use research. All right, so when that happens, what can happen is you get a lot of distortion. So you want to be very careful about that. And distortions can hinder good decision making because now you have to question whether or not what you have is, to the earlier point, truth. Right? All right. So that's why we're going to call this the echo chamber, because it's very easy, extraordinarily easy to get the answer you want when you use AI. And as Uptal said, validation is really important. And when you want to do the validation, you may not want to do that validation using AI, because then you're just only going to make things even more amplified. Okay, so AI is very susceptible to confirmation bias. So that is my one, if you take nothing else away from today, please keep that in mind, that AI is very susceptible to confirmation bias. And it learns from us. It's learning from us. So if we or whomever is feeding the AI comes with a perspective, and we all do, we all come with a perspective, then that perspective is going to be inherent in the data. Okay? So feedback loops and bias training data can make it a lot worse. So the training data that you give the AI, so like Kristen was talking earlier, they trained that AI, right? They gave it a bunch of data. Whatever you train that AI with, that's going to be really have an impact on what you get back. And if you don't know what the AI algorithms were that got created, you don't know how it was formed, what the basis was, then that also can create a lot of problems. So that's really important anytime you're using a model. I just want to put these things out there because we've had some amazing presentations today, right? But we don't know exactly how they trained it. We don't know exactly what went in. That's a lot of questions about that. So you want to keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples very, very briefly because I want to get into the game because make it fun. All right, this is a B2B software company that we worked with. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. And they relied on an AI to analyze customer feedback for a new product, right? They had done some research, put it into the AI, and they wanted to analyze the feedback from that research. The model was trained on using a lot of historical data that they had, because in order to create a good model, and I think we've heard this several times today, you need a lot of data. And sometimes you don't have a lot of data, so you pull old data. Now, one thing we did not talk about today is what you have to do data cleansing for good models, right? Conversation for another time, right? Data cleansing is a huge undertaking. So they put in a bunch of historical data, and that historical data was heavily leaning towards positive feedback. All right, so you know where I'm going, right? They had a lot of positive feedback from a specific customer segment. So this is a B2B software company. They orient their selling, their marketing, their product development around segments. I know many of you probably have something similar in your companies. So they overlooked some of the critical negative feedback from the other segments, because who wants to, you don't want the negative feedback, right? It was just, right? And that led to a failed product launch and very poor product adoption rates, because they had not done all the homework. They did not have good data, and they had been trained the data model on data that was leaning in one direction. All right, good example, right? So got to have diverse and unbiased training data. That could have probably prevented that problem, and they could have fixed it. So anytime you're going to do research out there, anytime you're going to create the data and to put them in the model, you want to be asking yourself, where is the bias in this data? It all has a bias, all of it. So be clear in your own mind, where are the biases in this data? Okay, that's kind of a critical point. All right, so let's talk about good versus bad prompts. This is important because we're going to do fun stuff. So I'm going to ask you, when you jump up and give me the answer, what is the reason for your answer? So pay attention here. All right, good prompts. These are the rules for good prompts. They should be neutral and open-ended. This is a rule. Second, they should be exploratory in nature. Third, they should be diverse. All right? And at the same time, specific. I'm going to give you some rules, but we'll have some examples in a moment. They should encourage balanced insights when you write your prompts. And they should avoid assumptions, which is very, very hard because we all have them. So you might want to do this in a collaborative way to see if you can tease that out. Bad prompts. Obviously, the very first thing is leading, as we heard earlier, right? Loaded language, and this is important. Sometimes we don't even realize our language is loaded. So that's an important point. Assumptive, right? Vague, and that's going to be very important in a moment. Overly positive, which we have a tendency to do. Where are my pessimists in the room? Raise your hand, though, natural pessimists. If you don't have a natural pessimist on your team, get one. Okay, really important. Get one on your team. They are very helpful. I naturally lean more to the positive side of things. It's just in my nature. And as a result, I have to be very careful. So I have a person on our team. I won't use a real name. I'll just use a fake name, Beverly. And she is naturally pessimistic. And she can always point out all the things that are wrong. She is perfect for an AI. All right, when we're working on research. Exclusionary. All right, so I'm going to give you some examples of good and bad prompts. Ready? A good prompt. Analyze customer feedback to identify strengths and areas for improvement. Why is this a good prompt? It's very balanced. It's open-ended, right? Okay, here's another one. What patterns or trends can be identified in the customer behavior over the past year? Why is this a good prompt? It's specific, time-based, right? Okay, good job. Okay, what are the factors influencing customer preferences in this market segment? Good prompt. Why is it a good prompt? Neutral, exactly. Thank you. All right, compare customer satisfaction ratings for our products and competitors. Good prompt, why? Diverse. Okay, analyze how customer sentiment varies across different regions or industries. Why is that one a good prompt? Pardon? Diverse. Good. All right. Jerry, you're not supposed to be playing. Okay. Okay, last one. Identify the top 3 trends in customer feedback over the past 6 months. Okay, so if your prompts, when you're doing research, look like those, Good job. Okay, raise your hand. Your prompts look like these. Raise your hand. Good job. Okay, anybody else? Yes, yes, okay. Let's talk about bad prompts, all right? Why do customers love our products? Okay, you're laughing. You're laughing. But if you would be surprised how many people put this kind of a prompt into things or something that's very similar. Okay, I'm not going to make you raise your hand and ask you if you've done a prompt like this, but this is not that uncommon. Okay, show me why our competitors are losing market share. What's wrong with this? It's an assumption. That's right. All right. So was the first one, right? We are making the assumption they love us. Okay, why do customers prefer our products over others? Also, same idea, but you can see how it was worded slightly different and how you could fall into the trap, right? That's a trap. Okay, what do customers think of our product? That doesn't seem as much of a trap, but it is a trap. Why is this a trap? Which one? It's exclusionary, exactly. Okay, good work. All right, analyze customer reviews. What's wrong with this prompt? It's vague, overly vague, exactly. And show me why our product is better than the competition. Now, again, I see this prompt a lot, right? How many of you have put something in like this, where you're asking for a comparison of your product against the competition? Anybody? Okay. All right. So, yes. Yes. We can ask all kinds of questions. Yes.
A good prompt if you said, do customers love our product, or do customers prefer our product over others?
It probably would not be a good prompt. What might be a better way to frame that prompt? What might be a better way to frame that prompt? Or what about these products might customers prefer, right? All right, good question. Who was the next one? Oh, you're good. Okay. Okay, good.
May I?
I'm sorry? You have one. Okay.
So my view is that there's no good prompt or bad prompts. And the reason I'm saying that, I'm being devil's advocate here. It's actually how you interpret the response is important.
Well,
So let me give you an example.
I agree with that.
Right. So you say, okay, show me why our product is better than the competition. When the response come back and say, that's it, well, you learn something. Because AI is trying to kiss up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to do best to tell you why your product is better.
Yes.
And if the response is not good enough, then you say, well, no, I learned something.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. What we are talking about is specifically in the context of conducting research, not in engaging in a conversation with the chat GPT or whatnot, right? This is in the context of actually conducting research. And the purpose of research is to test a scientific method, right? And also to be able to make good decisions. So the whole point of the research is to be able to answer a question and be able to make a decision based on the insights you got from the data. All right, so let's keep that in mind. Okay, so biggest challenges, here's a game, right? And we have prizes, ISBN prizes, all right? And you can come up and get them. Yes, these are awesome prizes. Come up and get them, and you can pick those in first come, first serve to pick the prizes. Okay, so good or bad prompt. What are the biggest challenges faced by our customers in whatever specific industry? And a follow-on prompt, how do they currently address them? Good prompt or bad prompt? Good prompt, raise your hand. Bad prompt, raise your hand. Okay, why is it a good prompt? Oh, bad prompt?
I think to be more specific. Yeah.
To be more specific. Well, they're going to have a specific industry. Okay, all right, but that's legit. Okay, who wants to tell me why it's a good prompt? It's, okay. This prompt is open-ended. That makes it a good prompt. It's focusing on covering a specific set of customers' pain points without assuming a specific outcome. So it's a good prompt. It encourages exploration of both the challenges, right, and existing solutions, and it will give you something actionable. Because remember, the key quality of good research is it is actionable. Okay? All right. Good job. So we get a prize. Yes. Yeah. Good question. How do you bridge that gap? So you got to make it specific enough that you're not just getting nonsense, right, out of the system, but at the same time, so the specifics in this particular example, biggest challenges faced by customers in a very specific industry. That is an open-ended question, and it is not vague, right? That is a totally open-ended question. It's not a yes or no, it's not closed, right? And how do they currently address them is also an open-ended question. Does that help? Okay, good. All right, next one, good or bad prompt. Analyze customer feedback to identify trends in satisfaction levels across different demographics. Good or bad prompt? Raise your hand, good prompt. Raise your hand, bad prompt. Okay, and why do you think it's a good prompt? Why do you think it's a good prompt? You think it's a bad prompt. Why do you think it's a bad prompt?
It's vague.
It's vague.
I think it's vague. I think it could be more specific with regard to the demographics.
Okay. Who says it's a good prompt? Why is it a good prompt?
I would ask it around, trying to understand the differences. Like if you're targeting a broad group of or a big population, that allows you to then understand how the differences in practice might work.
Okay. It's a good prompt. It is a good prompt. It is because it's seeking patterns and variations across a diverse group of customers. It's ensuring a balanced view of customer satisfaction, and it's not focusing on a single segment. All right, so it is a good prompt, okay? Don't worry, there's gonna be some examples of bad ones. All right, good or bad prompt. What are the reasons customers choose our product over others? Good prompt, raise your hand. Bad prompt? Why is it a bad prompt? Anybody? It's an assumptive, it's assuming, excellent, good job. It assumes that customers are actively choosing your products. That's why it's a bad product, a bad prompt. You've made an assumption that they are choosing your product over competitors, and that may not be true, okay? It's also a bad prompt because it focuses the AI on finding evidence to validate your assumption, and that is the trap, okay? That's the trap. So anytime you are forcing the AI to validate your assumption, you have hit the trap, all right? So think about that, all right? And it potentially ignores cases where customers might actually prefer alternatives or other competitors. Yes?
Question. Could it be turned into a good question if you asked on both sides? If you said,
well,
why
maybe.
do customers choose our product or decide not to choose our product versus others? Does that turn it into an okay prompt?
I have to think about how you might frame that in the way as framed, not perfect, right? How can we make that prompt better? How can we make that prompt better? Yes, okay. That would be better.
My version would be, what do customers see as the advantages and disadvantages of our product versus this product, that product, that product?
That's better.
Then it's very general.
Then that's getting better, much better. Okay, excellent, good work. All right, next one. Is this fun? Okay. Yes, yeah, we have winners, we have plenty of prizes. Okay, good prompt or bad prompt? What are the unmet needs of customers in emerging markets? How many of you are looking at emerging markets? Because we talked about innovation today a lot, okay? And how do they differ from those in established markets? Good prompt, raise your hand. Bad prompt, raise your hand. Good prompt. Yeah, it's a trick. It's a good prompt because it's comparative analysis. It's not loaded. It's not a loaded prompt. It gives unique opportunities, and there are no assumptions in the prompt. Let's look at the prompt. What are the unmet needs? Yes.
That is not specific enough, because depending upon what industry you're in, what customer base you're looking at, there's a lot of
Well, they were this week. To your point, Yes, and to your point, this specific customers gave them information about their market. I'm sorry about that. Good point though, but it is a good prompt, and they are trying to understand the difference between the emerging market and the existing market. So they have data on that, right? Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, good point. Excellent clarification. Well done. Okay. All right, so here's a good this lead-in for you, Joanne. Okay, good prompt or bad prompt? How has our recent pricing strategy improved customer acquisition? Raise your hand, good prompt. Raise your hand, bad prompt. Bad prompt. Why is it a bad prompt? It presumes that the pricing strategy has improved the customer acquisition. It is assuming that, all right? You have an assumption in your question that may not be true. And it leads, again, the AI to find evidence to support your point of view. All right, so what are some of the major themes that we have here? Is this helping you guys kind of clarify some prompting ideas? Right? So what are some of the major things that you're walking away with right now about prompts in your research? Yes. We don't, but it's easy to do because you already have a point of view. It's very easy to do, okay? And getting the statements to be neutral is hard work. Getting the statements to be neutral is hard work. It takes a lot of practice. Yes, you have questions?
Yes. So I guess you're saying AI is always going to try to find supportive data. Is there ever a case where you give it a bad prompt and it actually is like, well, you aren't having improved acquisitions?
Most AI, I'm just say most, want to please you. Okay, they want to please you, so they will try to make you happy. Just keep that in mind. It is designed to please. All right, now, I guess you could get a snarky AI. You can train it to be snarky, okay? So we could train it to be that way, but in general, they're designed to want to be helpful. And after a while, so I was showing Lynn a platform that we use. We use we're a small company, we're a boutique firm, so we use Cintra.ai as our platform. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but and I'm happy to show people if they want to see what it looks like. And they already have parsed helpers in the AI. They're already parsed into tasks, and they all have a name already. They come with names, and we can sometimes when we're having a team meeting, people will refer to the AI helpers by name as though they are real entities. All right, so keep that in mind, that how those relationships evolve in working with an AI, okay? So, all right, moving on. Good prompt or bad prompt? We're almost at the end. Yes.
Sorry, thank you.
That's okay, that's why we're here.
So there's this concept of red teaming that the military uses, and also Red Hat, the 6 hats in Six Sigma, where there's a hat that somebody wears to purposefully disagree. So are you aware of an AI designed to purposefully disagree with your statement?
I am not aware of that, but you can train.
Okay.
I mean, it's all about training, right? So you could, like I said, you could train it to ask to say, I might disagree with that answer because,
okay.
Or that here's an alternative way to look at that data, or whatever you might do, right?
Okay, thanks.
And again, you can even ask, if you get good at your prompts, you can even ask certain kinds of questions to help with that. Yes, Greg, did you have another point?
I just add to your comment, because that's a very important. So training takes time and effort, all this money. There's a shorter cut for this. All you need to do is ask AI to play a particular persona. Okay, then it will behave in the way you describe it. Then we're actually not good at fine tuning, but we'll do some tricks for it.
You will have to tell it what you mean by that. You will have to tell it what you mean by that persona. You will have to. That's back still training.
So one thing you can do, please act as Steve Jobs. That's it, right? Or you actually describe very detailed persona.
Yeah, you'll have to give it information that says, I would like you to exhibit the following kinds of behaviors when I ask you, blah, blah, blah. You'll have to give it you might even want to show it examples. You'll have to, there's still training. It's not like automatically say, please take an opposing position on your answers or whatever. It's much more detailed than that. Okay.
can't ask a prompt to debate itself. It's really common to
Yes,
use
you
AI
can.
to say, present an argument and then argue
Okay.
against your own argument as part of the prompt. It's a really common strategy.
It is. But remember, we're talking about it within the context of conducting research. I want us to keep the context in mind here. Not about having a conversation with the AI on a, whatever. We're talking about it within the context of doing customer research, market research, competitive intelligence, not the other, there are so many examples of ways you can use AI. The specific use case here is in the context of conducting research.
Laura,
yes.
What if you've gone through and you've set up some good prompts and you follow up prompts and you're really happy because you've done it all right, and then you ask the next prompt and it gives you back an answer. Oh, that last prompt I just used was something vague or something. Can you then just say, ignore that prompt and rewrite and correct a better prompt?
Yeah, you can.
Does it forget? Or does
it doesn't forget.
So, have you corrupted your whole thing, or
well,
you just like
you have to be you want to be careful, right? It doesn't forget, and that's another problem. So here's another thing to keep. You bring up a really good point, and we'll talk a little bit more about things to do. But remember, if you have been using a particular platform and you put information in the platform about X, whatever X might have been, and you then go and you put some other information about Y. If it isn't clearly parsed, it will go and look at the X and put it in with the Y. Okay? So you want to be careful about what gets mixed up. Yes, sir.
Can I put my prompt in the AI and ask it, is it a good one or bad one? And get us as a... Because I did that one and it gave me a lot of good...
yeah, I mean, you can try all kinds of things. And like one of the things we do when we play around, when we are playing, I'll say, here's what I want to try to accomplish, whatever it might be, not necessarily on research. I'm just giving you an example. What other information do you need from me to help me do this? Right? Or I might put something in here. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Please ask me a question until you have all the answers you need in order to help me accomplish this task. One question at a time. So those are some examples of things. Again, not necessarily in the context of research, but that's a use case, okay? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. We're still on good and bad prompts. Are we having fun? Okay, good. I want to have fun because it's been a long day. Analyze customer sentiment about our product and competitors to identify strengths and weaknesses. Good prompt or bad prompt? Raise your hand, good prompt. Raise your hand if you think it's a bad prompt. It's a good prompt, right? It's like asking for a balanced analysis, right? It's reducing the risk of bias insights. So the reason I want to give you some of these examples is that you can use these to mirror your questions, right? If you're not really sure, here's some examples of ones to use and ones not to use. Okay, so that's all the fun part. Fun's over. Now we're on to some other stuff. Okay, so let's talk about the fact that you could, yes, Lou.
The questions you posed there were good or bad. They're fairly straightforward, simple questions, like maybe 2 lines. Is there any, thought to having really lengthy questions, right? Do I want like a paragraph of a question to really get super specific?
I would put those personally.
Yeah.
This is me personally. Others may have a different point of view. I would turn those into shorter prompts personally, and I would probably try to organize them in a way that would make sense, right? Personally. Now, other people might feel differently, and again, how you train the model. Okay, 3 consequences of ignoring this bias. Now, these are relatively obvious. Most of you are pretty smart and have done a lot of experience, but I just want to do flawed insights. Flawed insights. They lead to poor business strategies and outcomes. Really important thing to keep in mind. And it's hard to do redos once you make a decision on a strategy, or it's hard to do a redo when you set a particular course and you're going down that course to only realize that you have made a bad decision, okay? So it's really important to pay attention to how you are building your models, how you are training the AI, the kind of data that you're using. All of that's really important. Okay, echo chambers. Here's the problem with them. And why I really try to discourage people to getting overly reliant on AI is that they reduce diversity of thought and innovation. Eventually, it will just give you and regurgitate and regurgitate and regurgitate if you're not careful. So that is a big thing to keep in mind about the AI. Ethical and reputational risk for your business. Be careful about how you are going to use it, because if you end up in a tricky situation, that can create other kinds of problems for your organization. So these are the 5 common pitfalls we see when we're working with our customers trying to do research using AI platforms. Bias training data, right? If that is the #1 problem. If your data has got any bias in it, it's only going to get worse as you go through it. So that's really important. It all starts with your data. All of it starts with your data. Algorithmic complexity. So remember that. Keep that in mind. Don't let them get too complicated. Oh, wait, sorry. Feedback loop reinforcement. You're getting, after a while, it will just keep giving you the same information over and over. So that's one of the challenges still. Implicit human bias in data labeling. Back to your data. Because remember, in research, you have data of some kind that you are using to get the answers, whether that's research from your customer satisfaction or customer experience surveys, or research you've done through third parties on competitive intelligence, or information you're gathering from industry or financial analysts about the market, all that data. So data labeling is really critical. And if you have to take a really good look at your data labels before you put them in. And then over-reliance on correlation without context. In order for the AI to give you what you need, context is critical, right? So you have to give it context. Okay, so these are the 5 common ones. So what do? We have 4 really practical tips. Many of you probably already are using or know some of these, so I'll just reiterate them. Safeguarding your research integrity. 1 is diverse training data as you possibly can get your hands on. Varied demographic data, varied perspectives, as diverse as you can get, right? And so when you look at your data, ask yourself, how diverse is this data? Does it go across segments? Does it go across personas? Does it go across regions? All that kind of diversity is really important. Okay. Second, prioritize accountability and external audits. They're really an essential part to kind of keep the algorithmic transparency. Know what the algorithms are in anything that you're going to use. Know what they are. If you don't know, ask somebody who built it. Ask them, what are the algorithms? All right, and be careful of algorithmic changes, because when you change the algorithm, it's going to change what you get, right? So that's an important consideration. Regular monitoring. You have to keep your eye on these AI entities, because if they are evolving rapidly, and so you want to always think about them within the context of real world applications. This is pretty important, right? 4th is collaborative peer reviews. Really recommend that you have diverse collaborative internal teams, maybe even some external people involved in reviewing what you're doing, because it is easy to get sucked into the vortex of the AI. Okay, so those are 4 really just practical tips. I hope you walk away with some of those good ideas. All right, here is an example of how you can get in trouble. Back to a pitfall. This is a trap. This is a logistics company that wanted to ensure their AI model was trained on feedback from all the regions they operate in, rather than just their largest market, right? So they have this company, it's a logistics company. They have a very prominent large market that represents a significant portion of their business. But then they have smaller markets that are also important, right? They used very diverse data to uncover unique customer needs in the smaller markets, because there was no opportunity to grow in their larger market. They already had the share they're going to have. So their growth had to come from places where they had smaller markets. This makes sense. I'm sure many of you are in that scenario. So they went through and thought about the algorithmic transparency, and they considered how they could use open source AI models were possible, right? And that allowed for external audits and greater transparency, right? Really important. So they were able to do a pretty good job there as an example. Okay, so the path to objective AI-driven research. Look, yes. No, that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Right?
So when we talk about algorithmic transparency, I mean, not all of us, myself included, are qualified to evaluate that.
Right.
So what do we do with that?
Get an expert that can, or find someone in the organization that can, right?
Okay.
Don't try to recognize where your limitations are. Get help.
Okay, I guess the flip side of that, I asked the poor question.
Prompts are important.
Where do we, like, what characteristics do we look for in somebody that would be able to help?
People who are recognized experts. There are people out there that are recognized experts in creating AI algorithms. I'm sure that some of the folks at Penn State probably have expertise in doing that.
Okay.
There are people in the consulting world that do that. And you might be surprised that people inside, like there may be some data scientists or data analysts or data modelers inside your company. I don't know what company you're
DuPont.
with. Pardon?
DuPont.
Oh, I bet there are slews of people here
Okay.
that probably have some expertise there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, that was a good question. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that AI is here, and we're all going to use it. So that genie is out of the bottle. So now the question becomes, how do we use it wisely, right? That's what's the key point of today. We're all going to use it. We're all going to ask it questions. We're going to ask it questions about our customers. We're going to ask it questions about our products. We're going to ask it questions about our competitors. We're naturally curious, and we're going to do things quickly, which AI helps us do. And we think it will allow us to circumvent, more arduous, more difficult, more time-consuming, more expensive ways of doing research. All right? Not necessarily better research. I noticed I didn't say better research. I said arduous, energy, time-consuming, complicated research. It's not necessarily better. That other research might actually be better, but this is the way of life right now. So human beings cannot be taken out of the equation of doing when you put together and using AI. And I think, Kristen, and you had 5 steps, and 3 of them involved human beings, right? In the 5 steps. So we must remember that you have to combine AI insights with human oversight, all right? So collaborative teams in doing research are really important because of the oversight that different perspectives will bring to the table. Use neutral, unbiased survey and research instruments. It's really important that you think about your research instrument itself when you are putting the data in. So if you did some research, for example, you want to make sure that the instrument itself doesn't automatically create a bias. Does that make sense? Okay. If we have time, I'll talk about a small case. So consider leveraging external research experts who have no dog in the hunt, as we say in Texas, when you are working on putting things together. Because everybody in your company has a dog in the hunt. That is a fact, right? So get people who don't have a dog in the hunt. Do you understand what I mean by that phrase? Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't being too colloquial there. Okay, I mean, I'm in Delaware, right? Yeah, they have dogs here that hunt. Okay, good. All right, just making, huh? Okay, actively, and I mean actively seek dissenting voices and alternative perspectives. Find your Beverleys in your company and engage them in the process. It's really important, especially with AI. Okay, so this is a little model. Just kind of a little picture that for those of you who are visual and like to have a little picture or an image to help you remember things on how to mitigate AI confirmation bias. Diversify your training data. The more, the better, right? That's important. Make sure your data is clean. Watch those data labels, right? Watch all of that. Apply human oversight, for sure. You cannot eliminate human beings from the research process. If you do that, you might end up in trouble. So that's a trap, thinking you can do it faster because humans are slower. right? Different people on your team are going to need more time to analyze things, think about things, process things. They can slow things down. That's just the nature of working with people. So keep that in mind, right? Identify those potential biases right out of the gate as much as possible. Find your pessimists, find your naysayers so that they can look at what you're looking at, review what you have, and help you identify those potential biases. And then regularly monitor the AI output. Okay, so let's see, I have 15 minutes. I did good. Okay, all right, so one good idea from today. Who has one good idea? Lou. Okay, good. Anybody else? One good idea from today, from this? Because I have found that if you don't think right now about what your one good idea is, you will have forgotten this tomorrow, right? Right? So if you don't want to share, that's okay. Write it down. Write down one good idea. Did you not, raise your hand if you did not get a good idea, because then you probably need to talk to me over a drink. Okay, all right. All right. There are no prizes. No prizes for that. Yeah, no prizes. Did you have a question? No, okay. All right. One thing you will do differently when you go back to the ranch after this conference is over. Who has one thing they will do differently in regards to conducting research using an AI? Uptal, yes.
Even for offline AI engines, the data input should remain unbiased.
Okay, one thing you'll do differently. Okay, who else? Anybody else have one thing you'll do differently? If you're not going to do anything differently, does that mean you've all been conducting research perfectly? Because if you're not going to do anything differently, that would suggest that what you're doing is perfect. Yes. Say again? Seek dissent. Seek dissent. I love that. That's a great way to phrase that. Excellent. Anybody else have something they'll do differently? Find your Beverleys, right? Find your Beverleys. Yes. Anybody else do differently? Yes, neutrality. Thank you. That's a hard word. Ensure neutrality in your prompts. And how would you do that? How would you ensure neutrality in your prompts? You can actually do tests on language, right? You can test it. Is it how neutral language is? So if you're not sure, run it through a tester. Okay? Anybody else? Yes. Yes, find your AI experts. Good point. And that's a great one. Anybody else? Okay, any questions before we call this a session and we let Joanne get going? Yes. Oh, sure.
I can do it right here. How valid is recursive feedback mechanisms within the AI system itself? That is, get the research out from the system, put it right back in the system and say, why is this wrong? And then let the machine just test itself. How valid is that as a response? I do it all the time, but like, I don't know if that's biased or not. Usually because it wants to please me, it wants to find an error. And I usually find some, and then I at least know something, but how valid is that?
Yeah, so again, are you doing that on data that's in the research? So for example,
I take the table and put it right back in as the prompt, and I say, are there outliers that you can find in this data? How valid is it? What do you think of this data? I'm asking for from like a negative perspective, like what's wrong with this? And it
But remember, the point of doing the research and putting your data into the model was to get an answer to some of the key questions, which were your prompt. Remember, that was its purpose, right? So the question wouldn't be about what's wrong with this data, right? Because you got an insight. So then the real question would be, what is a potential other insight from this data?
Sometimes it's like, no, I looked at the annual report and this company reported it wrong.
Yeah, so so I would be aware of doing that. I wouldn't consider that. I would be careful of doing research that way because how do I want to be? I want to try to frame this properly. It will make things up. It will make things up if you ask it to give you the data. We're talking about you giving it your data or your information and doing analysis and insights of that data. Be careful about asking the AI to give you, I'm just trying to say this in a neutral way, asking the AI to give you the data and then asking it to analyze the data that it gave you. That is, I would be careful of doing that. Kristen, do you have an opinion about that?
No, your distinction of what data it's looking at, I think, is the right one, right? So are you using a general chat GPT to do that?
We're using Copilot.
Yeah. The distinction of the data that you're pointing it at, I think, matters. Because in that instance, which I think is what you're referencing, you've done the you have it, you're asking AI to synthesize it with those open-ended questions.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, that is exactly right. Not asking it to give you the data. Yes, correct.
So I have had a similar sort of situation, but instead I get an incorrect response from the AI, and I say, that is an incorrect response. I tell the AI that it's incorrect, and then it usually says, oh, I'm very sorry, and then it gives me another response. Is that a valid way to, X out the invalid response?
We tell our helpers when they are wrong, and they're very apologetic, okay? All right, because they're trained to be apologetic, whoever created the platform, and it will attempt to try to fix it. And oftentimes the fix is also wrong. So you can end up in that kind of a situation. So you might want to be careful. What you want to tell it is, this is an incorrect response. This is now we're not talking about research anymore. The correct response is, right? Because now you're training it. So when I'm creating a model, I will give it data, and I will tell it what it is. I will tell it how the model is supposed to work. Let me just explain that. I'm going to tell it how the model is going to work. And then I will say, based on this model, here's the data. Give me and then I ask it for its answer. And I tell it, I know the answer. I tell it, I know what the answer is. It'll give me the answer. And then I will say to it, because it's not a person, yeah, right? That is the correct response. Or that is an incorrect response. This is the correct response. What is it about the correct response that is different from your response so it can learn, right? And you have to do that enough times so it is learning. But you give it the incorrect response and tell it the correct response, okay? I find that is a better way than asking it to try again, because then you just you'll end up more frustrated than it will, because it can do that forever and you can't.
Thank you.
Okay. That was a good point. Anybody else? Okay, so I think we'll turn it, oh, sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the conversation part of like when you do a chat, working through a ChatGPT and such. I've heard that once you go down a conversation long enough, like they have their individual tabs that it'll give you for your new conversations. Eventually, you start getting bad data, especially when you're doing research and stuff like that. It might start pulling stuff from way back. What's just a good general piece of advice for when to stop that conversation, start a new conversation with that AI?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a good question. I haven't really thought about at what point in the conversation it's time to terminate the conversation. You're talking about using like a Copilot tab or a ChatGPT tab?
Even the internal stuff that we use as well.
Well, the moment you start seeing that the data has gone amok, I would quit for sure, right? So, and that could happen sooner than later. I don't think it's about how long into the conversation, because some conversations could go south kind of quick, and some might not go south for a while, depending on what it is and how that, we'll call it, conversation is going. But the moment you begin to see the conversation go awry, I would terminate that, and I would explain clearly why this is no longer accurate or this is no longer correct because it's part of the training model, right?
All right. And then would you recommend validating anything that came before that, like initially, or would,
I recommend validating everything.
of course, yeah.
That's my opinion. I mean, those of you who are doing, that have talked about models today, do you not think we should, at this point in generative AI usage, not necessarily large language model usage, because that has actually been around for a while, but in generative AI usage, don't we think that we should continue to validate right now? Isn't that where the human oversight really does and the AI monitoring needs to maintain? Does anybody feel differently about that? Yeah, I think it is way too soon in the development of this technology to let go of the steering wheel, so to speak. Right? It's a little too soon to do that. I think we still need to be holding onto the steering wheel in the driver's seat right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right. Anybody else? Okay, good work. Those of you who won prizes, after Joanne is done, we come up and you can pick your prizes and we can talk for a few minutes. Okay?
All right. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
My pleasure.
A little bag for you.